trends. For example, the G20, the Belt and Road, and also some other areas like the NGFS. So I'll maybe present the whole process in like 5 different parts, starting from an overview of green finance market in China, which I think is still the most important, and also the fundamental part where we can just share with a lot of BRBR colleagues here. So starting from the green credits or green loans, by end of the first half of this year, the outstanding volume of green loans reached more than 13 trillion RMB, or slightly more than $2 trillion US. This still is the largest green credit market in the world. Although we don't have a lot of, let's say, statistics on other major economies for a few different reasons. The first reason is that they do not have a national taxonomy. So the numbers coming from different banks, even within one jurisdiction, normally would not be added up to a single number. For one reason is that actually in financial markets where banking system is playing a major role, actually can normally found in developing countries and some other areas like in Europe. But actually for other major developing countries, this is not always the case. And in terms of green credit balance, by end of 2020 last year, we'll see the actually still the largest banks in China are playing a much larger role. For example, the largest issuer is still China Development Bank, who has a share of almost like 35%, followed by Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, and the Agricultural Bank of China, China Construction Bank, and the Bank of China. So we are very happy to see that the ICBC is also playing a very leading role in terms of issuance of green loans. And another very significant growth in the market is the green bond market. So here is a chart where we can see the overall or average issues of green bonds by Chinese institutions, both within China mainland and also overseas, actually, or quite, let's say, the same. So it's somewhere between $300 million US. But actually this year, since the promotion or commitment or pledge by President Xi Jinping last year in September, that China would commit to carbon neutrality by 2060 and a carbon peak by 2030. A new type of green bonds, which is called carbon neutrality bonds, actually just increased the total volume of green bond issues in the first half, grown by more than 1 time compared to last year. So by end of June this year, the overall issuance of green bonds, including the issuance of carbon neutrality bonds, already exceeded $375 million US. So that's already the total amount issued last year. So we also foresee for the whole year of 2021, the issuance of green bonds, including carbon neutrality bonds and other green bonds, would be doubled comparing to last year. So probably also exceeding the number in 2019. There's another market which is quite emerging. It's the emission trading system, which was launched in early July this year. Since China is the largest emitter in the world, and this emission trading system is covering mainly the power market in China, which is accounting for almost 40% of the total emission in China. Upon launch, the BRBR Secretariat, who is also performing as a strategic role on the GIP steering committee. So let me now come to the last part of my presentation today. A few, let's say, priorities for future discussion, which we think will be important and might also be very interesting by the BRBR members online today. The first thing is on disclosure. As I said, disclosure is no longer something whether or not we need to do. It's just how and how we need to enhance it. I think carbon accounting could be a starting point if we want to really disclose a lot of, let's say, material change, not only the impact of climate in the, let's say, enterprise value creation, but also the materiality on the impact of the activities of any enterprise on the climate and environment. So carbon accounting and also the methods to account scope 3 emissions would be something I think a lot of financial institutions badly needed to have a better disclosure in terms of their assets, finance emissions. The second topic would be to mainstream the environmental risk analysis, which is already done by quite a few big banks, but not all banks have the capacity or the resources to do so. I think a lot of capacity building events or activities is needed to scale up the efforts. And third is the production in product innovation. For example, as I said, the financing for climate transition or transition financing would be very, let's say, important, as most of the economy for most countries in the world are still high carbon, and there's still a lot of distance between now and the carbon neutrality. So how we can just make sure the carbon neutrality goals would be, let's say, realized on time for almost all sectors would be something the financial sector needs to think about as well. Last but not least, and also this is only not exhaustive listing of what we need to do, is promoting green standards, including along the Belt and Road. So just on Tuesday, we just said, we have a quote from Deputy Governor Chen Yilu from PBOC. He said, it is strongly recommended that all financial sectors and also real sector companies who are engaging or making investments along the Belt and Road and maybe other investments shall be following higher standards in terms of green investments and also infrastructure projects. So for those countries who do not have a standard on environmental climate or the standard is too low, it is strongly recommended that these investors or these corporates need to follow at least the China standard, or they are also encouraged to follow the international practice in terms of the sustainability goals and standards. So I hope that will be very helpful and there could be a starting point for discussion later today. And should there be any questions, I'll also be very happy to answer. Thank you very much. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheng. So it is so encouraging to see that policies and implementation.
The most landmark transactions in the regions, including ICBC, definitely Green Bond Series, Hong Kong government and South Korea governments debut green and sustainability bonds, and also AIIB's Sustainable Development Bond. So maybe I will start to the next slide. In the international market standard, when we define what is a green bond, the most commonly referenced document would be the Green Bond Principle, and it's constructed of 4 key components. Basically, it defines these 4 components, define what are the structuring aspects that investors in the markets would expect from a green bond. Most importantly, it would be the element for use of proceed. I'll go further into it. So basically, in the ICMA principles, they have a very broad definition of the green categories that they would define as green. For example, renewable energy, wastewater management, pollution prevention, control, circular economy, etc. And the second element would be the process of project evaluation selection. Basically, issuers need to have a proper internal procedure to select and evaluate projects, to make sure that there's an ESG angle when you select those projects, and make sure that the project selected meets with the expectation and the criteria included in the framework. And management of proceed, basically to make sure an amount that is equivalent to the bond proceed would be tracked and allocated to green projects. And finally, reporting commitment, I'll go through that in detail later on. Basically, the expectation in the international market is a bit different from the onshore markets, that issuer would need to report on the allocation and impact generated from those green projects on an annual basis until the full allocation of proceed, mainly for corporate. And the key documents, I would say, for international green bond issuance on a pre-issuance stage would be the Green Bond Framework, which define what it means for the issuers in terms of the 4 pillars laid out in the Green Bond Principle. And secondly, to have an external reviewer to come in and affirms the definition and structuring element laid out in the framework for to be aligned with the ICMA principle. Next page. When we advise on a client to kind of recommend them